It's talk that's trying to get you to behave in a way so I don't have to deal with my immaturity as a narcissistic parent. I don't have to deal with that if I can get you to change. So what that they feel that way? Okay, they felt that way for 20 years and they're still that way because they're still that way. They're narcissistic parents. To break free, start the work of self-differentiation. And that self-differentiation is, I am different from you. Remember, they changed your diapers. So therefore, they should get to know what your raise is when you're 45 years old from your work and what raise you got because they changed your diaper when you were an infant.
Are you tired of feeling controlled by your narcissistic parents? In this video, I want to share 10 practical steps to flip the power dynamics with narcissistic parents and reclaim your emotional independence.
I'm Jerry Wise, and for over 45 years, I've helped hundreds of thousands of people get their narcissistic and dysfunctional family out of them so they can finally reclaim their true self and find clarity, peace, and lasting freedom. Number 1, stop pleasing your narcissistic parents. Certainly, if you're in a situation where you are dependent on them, financially, housing-wise, then it's very unwise to maybe challenge them outright. And I would get help for yourself if you're in that situation. If you have more autonomy, meaning you're an adult living somewhere else or have your own family and still have narcissistic parents as an adult, growing up in a narcissistic family, you were conditioned to please your parents. Your sense of worth was borrowed from their approval, creating an emotional and mental pseudo-self, a version of you that existed only to serve their needs, not your own needs. As an adult, the habit of people-pleasing continues, often leaving you disconnected from your real self. And to break this pattern, you need to stop seeking validation from others, validation from your parent, and start choosing what is right for you. I know I've had situations in which very powerful female or male executives of big companies, where they make all of the decisions, they go home and fall into a child role with their parents, and particularly narcissistic parents. They lose all of that professionalism. They lose all of that adulthood that they have when they're sitting at the head of the boardroom table, and they become children when they go home. So that's that family Wi-Fi and super self that I talk so much about happening for us as adults. This is how you start to declare yourself, calmly stating who you really are, even when others don't approve. And I think calmly is very important. I think matter-of-factly is very important, even when others don't approve. We're not stating who we are to start an argument, though it could start an argument, but I'm not going to engage in the argument. I'm going to try to stay calm and matter-of-fact. Number 2, break free from narcissistic parents' emotional manipulation. Make emotional manipulation more difficult for the narcissistic parent by focusing on detachment and cutting the emotional umbilical cord, because we have that emotional umbilical cord that's still connected to our parents and that family super self. Narcissistic parents often control, gaslight, and manipulate you, making you doubt your perceptions and feelings. They turn your emotional reality upside down, causing you to question your own thoughts, creating the version of you your parents needed you to be, not who you truly are. These manipulations don't stop when we grow up. You might still find yourself doubting your feelings or taking responsibility for others' emotions. To flip the dynamic, you need to recognize their manipulation for what it is and stay grounded in your true feelings, those that come from your authentic self, not from the family's programming. In my Road to Self program, I teach you how to recognize the difference between systems feelings, I also call these false feelings, from your true feelings, the family super self feelings from your true feelings. These videos that I present on YouTube are short and I can't go into all of the details. around these concepts. So please join the Road to Self program. Number 3, stop engaging in power struggles with narcissistic parents. Drop your side of the tug of war rope. And I teach people over and over again to let go of your side of the rope. Because if you stay in a tug of war with them, the arguments, the wanting to change them, the wanting them to understand you, when you stay in that tug of war, it's just more miserable for you, and you don't become more adult-like, you become more childlike. Narcissistic parents thrive on creating conflict to maintain control. They pull you into endless power struggles, making you feel like you have to constantly fight for validation and for respect. Power struggles serve enmeshment or over closeness emotionally. And that's at the basis of what we learned in our family of origin growing up. We were too connected emotionally to our family of origin and did not grow into healthier adults and having a healthier distance emotionally from our family, and particularly a narcissistic parent. As an adult, you might find yourself still caught in these conflicts, trying to prove yourself, trying to gain approval, or correct your narcissistic parent. But the key to flipping the dynamic is to observe without absorbing. See the dysfunction clearly without getting pulled into it or reacting. And we can drop the rope by going, that is them, that's how they think, I don't think that way, and I'm not going to engage in that because there's no sense. This is the way they see it. And don't think you can talk them out of it. I'm sure you've tried and found that to be rather a frustrating endeavor. Practice calmly stepping out of the emotional chaos they try to draw you into. Number 4, stand firm in your truth with narcissistic parents. Narcissistic parents often invalidated your voice, making you feel like your truth didn't matter. Over time, you were trained to suppress your thoughts and feelings to keep the peace or to avoid their wrath, anger, shaming, discounting. This invalidation follows you into adulthood, making it hard to express your truth without fear of backlash. To flip the power dynamic, you need to practice self-definition, knowing and expressing your thoughts, feelings, and limits without needing your family or others' approval. And we can do that, and we can learn to do that. We can learn to not need their approval or their acceptance or whatever views they have of my own sense of self or what I want or wish or my boundaries. This is how you begin to get the family out of you. You stop letting their emotional Wi-Fi control your internal world. You don't have to argue with them to stand firm in your truth. Make sure you know your thoughts and feelings. And you can know their thoughts and their feelings, which they'll make those very clear to you, which are often distorted, blaming, even delusional. But just make sure you know yours. They can have theirs. You don't have to react or respond. It doesn't matter. So what that they feel that way? Okay, they felt that way for 20 years. Why am I going to be upset about it 20 years later? And they're still that way because they're still that way. They're narcissistic parents. That's how they are. And I want to get to the place where it doesn't matter. Number 5, stop allowing narcissistic parents to define your identity. Narcissistic parents stifled your individuality, demanding that you meet their emotional needs and making your worth contingent on fulfilling their expectations. This left you without a strong sense of true self, as your identity was shaped entirely by their needs. In adulthood, you may still feel disconnected from who you really are, constantly adapting to meet others' expectations. To break free, start the work of self-differentiation. And that self-differentiation is, I am different from you. You're you, and I am me. I don't need to change you, and you don't need to change me. You still may try, but it's not going to have an impact. By recognizing and asserting your identity separate from your family's control, you must learn to stand in who you really are, no longer defined by their version of you. And again, this is the whole means by which I help people get out of the role of being a scapegoat. You may not be able to change their view of you as a scapegoat, but you can change your view of you being a scapegoat. It's their craziness, not the reality that you are truly this role. Number 6, break the cycle of guilt and shame from narcissistic parents. Narcissistic parents use guilt and shame to keep you tied to them, making you feel responsible for their emotions or actions. This emotional glue creates an invisible bond that pulls you back into their dysfunction, even as an adult. These feelings of guilt and shame can persist throughout adulthood, causing you to feel anxious, obligated, or inadequate. To flip the dynamic, you must recognize these feelings as systems feelings, not your true feelings. These are program responses designed to keep you hooked. Your job is to detach emotionally from their guilt and their shame and reclaim your own peace. Number 7, emotionally detach from your narcissistic parents. Narcissistic parents made you emotionally dependent on them, leaving you unable to develop your own sense of self and autonomy. This is how they control. You must be dependent on me, emotionally, mentally, adult-wise, financially, and in many other ways. And needing my approval, all of that adds up to a strong ability to control. They needed you to stay attached to them emotionally, which stunted your ability to grow independently and autonomously. As an adult, you might still feel like you need your family's or others' approval or emotional support to function. To break free, you must practice emotional detachment, creating internal boundaries that allow you to stay grounded and make decisions for yourself, regardless of their influence or who it pleases or who it doesn't please. External boundaries is, I'm not coming to visit you every week. Internal boundary is, if you think I'm crazy, it doesn't matter to me. That's an internal boundary. It doesn't go in. I have a boundary emotionally. And that takes more discussion, more work, and that's why I do a lot more discussion of internal boundaries in the Road to Self program, which I hope you will sign up for. A good book for men might be the book No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover. And for women, Growing Yourself Up by Jenny Brown. And I always like books by Harriet Lerner. She's a great author, using family systems and kind of talking about us being enmeshed in families. Number 8, learn to set healthy boundaries with narcissistic parents. You may ask, well, how on earth do I set healthy boundaries with a narcissistic parent? Do you know how many times I've gotten that question and people have asked me? And I certainly understand the difficulty, but what they're confusing, I think, is if I'm setting a boundary, it is changing them. A boundary is not set to change them. I hope they honor it, but it's not a boundary to change them. A boundary is there to protect and care about me. Narcissistic parents have no respect for boundaries, making you feel guilty for even having them. They invade your emotional and physical space, leaving you feeling drained, violated, and unseen. Well, I told you not to buy that dress for your wedding. I told you not to marry them, and you went ahead and married them anyway. That's very inappropriate. Those are boundary breaking comments. Setting a boundary with a narcissistic parent does not mean they take it well. They won't, and they will resist. They will try to get you to remove the boundary or just plain ignore it. Setting boundaries includes what I do when they do what they do. See them less, call them less, ignore them, state if they change, you will respond in a more positive way, but leave it up to them to change or be who they are. For example, if I don't want to talk about my spouse with a narcissistic parent, then I might say, well, Mom, if you bring this up, I will stay quiet or I'll leave. I've said several times I don't wish to talk about my husband with you, warning them if we're going to discuss this on the phone, when I said this topic was out of bounds, then I'm afraid I will have to hang up. So again, it's setting a boundary has to do with what I'm going to do with what they're going to do with my boundary. I'm not trying to change them, though I might like them to honor my boundary. There's nothing wrong with that. But they may not. And I always like to go into it with they probably won't honor my boundary. So I might as well start thinking of what I'm going to be doing when they don't honor my boundary, because they will test you and they will hope you will go back to the same old way. As an adult, you may find it hard to set boundaries, always feeling guilty or afraid to say no. To flip the dynamic, you need to set clear, non-negotiable boundaries that protect your emotional well-being. This is your right, not a privilege, and it's necessary for your healing. Number 9, stop taking responsibility for narcissistic parents' actions. Narcissistic parents often make you feel responsible for their actions, their emotions, their thoughts, their failures. You were taught that it was your job to fix their problems or make them happy, leaving you with a heavy emotional burden. And I think about the holidays, and I'm more familiar with the Christian holidays, but they're holidays of many different groups. And in the, say Christmas holiday or Thanksgiving even, which is a secular holiday in most places, that when you say, I'm not able to be there because I need to do something with my family, then you're now responsible for their unhappiness. No, you're not responsible for their unhappiness. Some parents would say, oh, I'm really disappointed you're not going to be there. I really would love to have you there. But I understand you have a right to make that choice. There are parents who do that. Rather than, oh, now you're hurting me and I feel so awful. Why would you betray the family? Everybody's going to be there. You have to be there for us to have a good Thanksgiving, or it won't even be Thanksgiving. Well, that's all shaming talk and guilting talk, and it's talk that's trying to get you to behave in a way so I don't have to deal with my immaturity as a narcissistic parent. I don't have to deal with that if I can get you to change. As an adult, this pattern can continue, causing you to take on guilt or blame for their issues. To break free, you must stop taking responsibility for their actions, their feelings. Their behavior is theirs to own, not yours. Number 10, limit narcissistic parents' access to your life. Narcissistic parents taught you early on that your life was an open book to them. Remember, they changed your diapers. So therefore, they should get to know what your raise is when you're 45 years old from your work and what raise you got, because they changed your diaper when you were an infant. I mean, I'm sure many of you have had that happen before. Or, why change your diaper? What do you mean? I'm your mother. I'm your father. I should ask these questions. No, you're being nibby and don't have a good sense of self between yourself and myself. They expected you to meet their emotional needs at the expense of your own boundaries, leaving you feeling constantly exposed and dependent on their approval. As an adult, you may still feel like you have to share every detail of your life with them, even if it means sacrificing your privacy and independence. Many people talk about this as that we are the supply for the narcissistic parent. We are their supply for the narcissist. And that supply is everything about our lives, all of our emotions. They can control us, and that's their supply. The key to flipping the power dynamic is setting external boundaries, the outer expressions of knowing who you are and what you need without guilt. I don't want to talk about what my raise is if I'm 45 years old and just got a promotion at work. I don't think anybody needs to know that. But my spouse, my partner, people who need to know, the IRS, taxes, I have to share with some people. But what is the point of sharing that with mom and dad? what are they going to do with that? I fear the narcissistic parent may want to gossip about it, or they may want to use it against you at some time in the future. Oh, well, you're making $185,000 now. So blah, 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 blah. Well, you weren't telling them that to get that kind of manipulation. To truly reclaim your power, you must stop playing by their rules, overvaluing their distorted thoughts and feelings, and giving them the power to make you feel bad. Every action you take to detach emotionally, set boundaries, and prioritize your needs is a step towards flipping the power dynamic. Remember, your parents don't have to keep defining you through their control and dysfunction. You can flip the power dynamic by finally becoming who you truly are and staying grounded in the work of your self-differentiation. And again, I talk a lot more about self-differentiation, how you accomplish that, what are the steps in doing that in the program, Your Road to Self. And if you're finally ready to break free and start living with clarity and peace and grounded connection to your true self, then join that program, the Road to Self program. Many who have joined the program say it was the missing piece in their healing journey, the step that finally helped them get their family out of them and stand strong as their true self. There are many testimonials for the program. No testimonial was solicited other than, if you'd like to give a testimony, you write it however you want to write it. All the testimonials were unsolicited. They're real. There are no fake ones on there. I will not allow that. If you're not sure if Road to Self is for you, then start with the free 84-minute self-differentiation training. Over 30,000 people have joined the free training as their first step. Click the links in the description to get started. And be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so that you'll never miss a new video coming out. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day, and be wise.
Hi, my name is Jerry Wise. I'm a relationship expert. I am a self-specialist, and I'm the director of the Center for Self-Differentiation in Indianapolis, Indiana, Carmel, Indiana. This video is entitled, How to Lose a Narcissist in 10 Days. Certainly the title is oversimplified. Certainly there can be many very complex situations in which we find ourselves, in which we're in a relationship with a narcissist, such as a boyfriend or girlfriend, or parents, or children, or any number of caregivers, friends, people around us. So there are lots of different types of relationships. And as you probably know, or surmise, that there are lots of different types of narcissists. This particular video, we're going to concentrate on more of the less toxic and less malignant narcissist, because I think that takes a little more specialized work when you're trying to leave a malignant narcissist who is abusive or stalking and doing all kinds of even criminal acts to keep you within their sphere of influence. But I still think these things would apply to almost anyone who's wanting to lose a narcissist. And I think, in a nutshell, the best way to lose a narcissist is to find yourself. If you find yourself, a narcissist will not want you, a narcissist will not want to be with you, a narcissist will not be able to tolerate you. So that's one of the quickest ways, and I think the best ways. It's also the long-term goal for recovery. When we have been in a relationship with a narcissist, or we've been an adult child of a narcissist, and we're needing to recover as adults, and we grew up in a narcissistic home. So the very first thing I would suggest is, no contact, or if anything, limited contact, but no contact with the narcissist. And we want to first get out of the mirror, because we're in their mirror when we're always within their sphere of influence. And so we want to remove ourselves from the mirror. And again, for different narcissists, that may be easier or difficult depending upon their pathology and their difficulty and their personality disorder and their type of narcissism. I think second of all, since we have lacked self, and that's why we've gotten into a relationship with a narcissist, we lack self because we grew up in a narcissistic home, oftentimes if we're trying to recover. Also, if we've grown up with a narcissistic parent, it's not so unusual for us to grow up and fall in love with a narcissist. Also, if we're an ACOA, adult child of an alcoholic, alcoholism is a very narcissistic disease. And so it functions much like narcissistic personality disorder, but it comes from a different cause, the use of alcohol and the addiction to alcohol. So since we lack a self, then we must quickly find some way to borrow self. And when we start out finding ourselves by borrowing a self from others. Recovery groups, adult child of alcoholics groups, CODA groups, codependent anonymous groups, support groups, therapy groups, the adult child of narcissistic groups, there are a few around. Also Al-Anon is another good place to begin to find yourself, because that's where we have to start, is quickly and immediately start working on self. And so we want to start to borrow one. We also can find a self-therapist or a counselor that we trust, who will begin to support us in our self-journey and focusing on ourselves. Because when we've been in the web of the narcissist and within the orbit of the narcissist, all of our focus has been around them. And the person it hasn't been around is around us. I would also suggest no contact with the flying monkeys, that you withhold that communication interaction with those whom the narcissist will send out to try and persuade you to come back, or to convince you, or to encourage your cognitive dissonance, meaning I don't know whether I should stay, I don't know whether I should go, and I feel caught in that dissonance. And the flying monkeys will come out and say, no, 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 you're the one that's crazy, not the narcissist. No, it's not your mother, it's you. You know, why do you give mom such a hard time? Well, mom's the narcissist. And then all the siblings come out and they're all telling you, no, 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 it's you. So we reduce our contact with the flying monkeys. I would suggest reading such as Psychopath Free book, Codependent No More. I would devour videos on sense of self, growing in a sense of self, overcoming codependency, and lack of self. There are lots of videos out there that can be of help to you. And I would devour them. I would put as much time focusing on self as we focus on the narcissist. And that's really hard, because we don't realize how much time we've spent focusing on the narcissist. Be sure to reject your false feelings early on when we're trying to lose the narcissist. When I say false feelings, I'm talking about the feelings that come from childhood and come from the narcissist, such as the fog, you know, the obligation, guilt, failure, where we have false guilt, false failure, false obligation. And oftentimes, if someone's been in a relationship with a narcissist, those are the main feelings they're feeling. What they don't realize is those feelings aren't real. Please understand me. I understand you're really having them, but they are not based on reality. They are based on fear. They are based on an unhealthy view of relationships, and they're based on our past from our family of origin. So they're kind of systems feelings. They're not my genuine feelings. They're feelings imposed on me from my emotional dynamics that I've been involved with over the years. Trust your goal. Don't trust your false feelings. The goal is to find yourself. Also, stop rejecting yourself.
Stop abandoning yourself. Often we fear abandonment, we fear rejection because we do that to ourselves. Once we overcome our self-fear, self-abandonment, self-rejection, once we begin to love ourselves, we don't fear the rejection and abandonment of others. So that's where we begin to stop not taking care of ourselves. Make us a priority. Make you a priority. So, again, focus on you and only you, not on the narcissist. Think of the enmeshment emotionally that you have with the narcissist early on in your beginnings to disconnect from them. Think of your enmeshment as an addiction. Because enmeshment is an addiction. It's our drug of choice. It's the alcohol, the cocaine we keep going back for. I need that enmeshment. If I'm not enmeshed with the narcissist, then who am I? And remember, it is your drug of choice. The narcissist is addicted to their supply, that is to me. We're addicted to supplying their supply. And so we have that trauma bonding with them. And so we want to see it as something that is cunning, baffling, and powerful, as Alcoholics Anonymous says. That enmeshment is cunning, baffling, and powerful. And we want to begin to see that connectedness as our addiction, not as a healthy, loving relationship. Stop over-functioning. Start under-functioning. Function with regard to yourself, but under-function with regard to the narcissist and those around them. Often we have over-functioned, paid for this, paid for that, absorbed and taken up all of their pain and struggles and difficulties that they've had. We pay and pay and pay for the narcissistic connection with us and for that narcissist relationship. During this phase, we make a determination we're going to stop over-functioning. We're going to, and if anything, under-function. If you've over-functioned, then you under-function, then you can come back to a balance. But the first is begin to under-function. No, I can't do that. I don't want to do that. I'm not able to do that. And help and have support from those people you're borrowing self from. Your supportive friends, your supportive groups, who will support you in you saying no. Realize that it is okay to let's see what. Oh, now I know. Realize that it's okay to break your promises. Many times, people who are in relationship with narcissists will feel guilty. Well, I promised them this. I promised them I'd do that. If I cut off from the narcissist, then I won't keep all of my promises. Remember, you've made your promises while under the influence. If someone came to you and they were absolutely drunk and said, hey, I'll take you to Miami Beach, and I'm fortunate to be down here in Miami South Beach during this week, and if somebody promises that they'll take you to Miami Beach while drunk, and then you come back to them and you say, well, hey, you're going to take me to Miami Beach, aren't you, Bob? And Bob goes, what are you talking about? And, oh, that's right, you were drunk, so I guess we probably aren't going to Miami. No, we're not. And we understand that if you're under the influence, you make bad promises. You overfunction. You overpromise. And so I believe it's okay to break those promises while made under the influence of a narcissist or made under the influence of enmeshment, emotional enmeshment. And remember, consider you are under the influence. I would consider also in the first 10 days you might want to think about treatment. Many have experienced PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Many have experienced depression, pain, trauma, codependency, and sometimes for many it could be very helpful to go into treatment, even inpatient treatment, to get away and to find yourself in an emergency way. I know one site that we have used, it's called On Site, and it's down in Nashville, Tennessee. That's a treatment facility that would help with codependency and trauma and those kinds of things. Also, don't believe any change. Don't believe in the narcissistic hibernation, and don't believe love bombing during this period. When love bombing happens, hey, I love you, I don't know why you're upset, I'm so sorry you're unhappy, it was all my fault. Don't believe that. Don't believe hibernation, where all of a sudden they become wonderful and not the narcissist. That's where their narcissism has gone into hibernation. And don't believe the change that you see. Real change does not happen for a year. You know, that's one of the things when I used to help folks in inpatient treatment for alcohol and drug abuse. And they would say, you know what, wives would come in, and I would treat the family members who come in for the alcoholic and addict, and they would say, hey, well, when do we know they've really changed? And the rule is always, at a year, you've got a good hope that there's really change happening. And that's what I tell folks when they're going to say, well, you know, you've really messed up my life, you've been into drugs or alcohol, or you promised this or you promised that, and you don't keep your promises. If you can do that for a year, then we can maybe be out of the woods. But it's very hard for people to stay true and to not be that toxic self for a year. If they can, they just might be changing. Trust your experience with the narcissist. Trust your story. You are a war victim. It's hard to tell other people many times because they don't believe us, or they don't believe what we're saying. I remember when I dealt with, as a pastor, a narcissistic couple, and a very wounded narcissistic couple, and I would tell other people this is how they were being, and they just couldn't believe it. They go, oh, Jerry, I think you're just misreading. I wasn't misreading anything. And I remember having that cognitive dissonance of, are they crazy or am I crazy? Who's crazy here? Because one of us has got to be crazy. And then one night I remember sitting on my bed going, I'm not crazy. It's them. And that was a huge, huge beginning for me to change in trusting that I know I was not seeing things. And no matter what anybody said, I knew what I knew. Another point would be, it can be useful to not try to sort out all of your cognitive dissonance. In other words, I'm thinking both one way and another way at the same time. Don't try to work those out with the narcissist. You're not going to get anywhere. The best thing to stay with the narcissist is just confused. Well, why don't you come back to me? I'm being real nice right now, and we could have a good relationship. See, I'm sorry I hurt you. The best mental state to stay in is confused and on your goal to find yourself. I hear what you're saying, Bill, Mary, I hear what you're saying, but I'm confused right now, and I'm going to stay confused right now, thank you. And I will continue staying confused until I get things cleared up. But you telling me things is not going to clear that up. Also, we want to stop minimizing and stop rationalizing that things are not that bad. I don't know how long I used to put in that process, especially like this couple that I had when I was a pastor. And over again I say, well, it's not that bad. I mean, they do this or they do that. But it really was very toxic. It was toxic for the church. It was toxic for me. It caused a lot of emotional pain and drama. And I would minimize it and rationalize it. Whenever we are with the narcissist, we do tend to do that because we do tend to give folks and give people around us a break. With a narcissist, it's very dangerous to give them a break. And if we know what we know, stay with what you know. Believe what you know. Believe what you've seen. Believe how they've betrayed you. Believe how they've been angry with you. Believe how they've been non-empathetic. How they've focused on themselves. how they've been angry over nothing, how they desire you to be a certain way and to shape you into being the person they want you to be. Believe that and believe it. And find some professionals and find some friends who will believe you. Also, remember, you are operating out of a pseudo-self. The narcissist is operating out of a pseudo-self, a not real self, and so are we. They are because they have narcissistic personality disorder. We are doing it because we have selflessness, we don't have self, and we are codependent. We've probably never known ourselves, and so we operate out of a pseudo-self. In other words, I'll be or do whatever you need me to be or do to make people happy. That's a pseudo-self. I'm always scanning and make sure that I'm keeping the image right. I'm not doing it because I want to or I believe, or it's because those aren't important. My wants, needs, beliefs, values, opinions are not important. I just need to live in a way that everybody else likes me. That's a pseudo-self. That's not an authentic, real self. So remember, you're going to be operating out a pseudo-self for a while. You need to be with people who can be supportive of you during this vulnerable stage while you're beginning to back out of the pseudo-self and finding a real self. There are many more things that I could share with you about losing a narcissist in 10 days. And I'd be happy to work with you. You can contact me at the telephone and the email address that I have on the screen. I've got 120 some videos on YouTube. Whether you live in Los Angeles or Miami Beach or the Midwest or in any country around the world in which you have internet connection, I work with individuals, couples, even families, to help them in their recovery and finding a sense of self. That is my expertise. I really want to thank you for watching today. I hope this video was a help to you, and have a great day. Hello, my name is Jerry Wise, and I am a marriage and family expert. I provide client professional help in the office, via Skype, via FaceTime or phone, no matter where my clients live, and even in the comfort of their own living room. Today's video is entitled, Setting Boundaries is Not Emotionally Cutting Off. I have many people come to me and ask me about the family system's understanding of emotional cutoff and boundaries, and many times people equate setting boundaries, distancing, moving away with their family of origin, in their family of origin milieu or context, as cutting off. Or they equate all of those things as not cutting off. And what I want to say is, if you get nothing else from this video, that what I'd like to say is that two people can do the very same thing in terms of boundaries, and one be an emotional cutoff and the other not be an emotional cutoff. And that's what I'd like to talk about in this video today. And why are emotional cutoffs a problem? That's another thing people ask me about. Because it cementizes or solidifies dysfunctional patterns within us. We're all immobile, where everybody's connected and all their strings are connected as the mobile hangs, and if you pull one part, it pulls on the other parts. Or we're all connected in our family of origin, or in society actually, but family of origin for sure, with rubber bands, and we all try to move and twist, but whenever we move it affects someone else over there, because we are
we do have this intergenerational transmission of emotional field, the emotional life of the family. There is a connectedness between us. If we ignore it at our peril. If we don't ignore it, we can find ways out and find ways to become not our family and to become ourselves. And again, not our family doesn't mean I blame my family. It just means I want to be me, not me, my family, me/my family. I just want to be me while I am connected to my family, and that continues on throughout my life. Whether I ever see them or not, it still continues on throughout my life. An emotional cutoff is a process of emotional distancing. An emotional cutoff occurs when we do not feel we have any other options to survive emotionally, or we can survive safely. We then set up external boundaries to deal with this emotional craziness, that emotional craziness that we feel inside, or what we believe the other is causing us to do. That's emotional cutoff language. Unresolved emotional attachments with our family of origin creates and causes emotional cutoff in adult life. And again, people say, well, why does that matter? Because emotional cutoffs in one area of your life can affect emotional cutoffs in other areas of your life. So it's not like we can just do it over here and it not happen over here. Such as, I want you to show me any marriage, any relationship where one of the spouses have completely cut off from their parents and their family of origin, and that it does not affect their marriage in a negative way. I have just not found anyone. Maybe you know someone, maybe you're the exception. So you don't have to write me and tell me you're the exception. I understand you might be. But for the majority of people, it does affect them in a negative way in their current adult relationships. Many people will say it doesn't affect me, and I'm much happier and better off. I understand you're happier, and I don't deny that. But I'm not sure it doesn't affect you in your current relationship. Many times people are in denial about that because they just want to believe they made a good decision and feel guiltless or not guilty about cutting off from their family, who might be very toxic and very unhealthy. Setting boundaries is a process of emotion that is a process of the emotionally mature adult self. Let me repeat that again. Setting boundaries is the process of the emotional mature adult self, choosing to limit the chaos or toxicity of others. But it is not an emotionally distancing process. An emotional cutoff does not really get us emotionally distant. That's the whole point that I've tried to make about emotional cutoffs. Many people feel they're emotionally distant when they emotionally cut off. The problem is you're just reacting to the overcloseness. And 180 degrees from sick is still sick. 180 degrees. And whereas boundary setting by a mature adult self isn't 180 degree. It's a 90 degree act rather than 0 to 180 degrees. Emotional cutoffs does not really get us emotionally distant. It gets us some geographical distance. It gets us, well, I don't talk to my parents anymore. It gets us, I don't talk to my siblings anymore. It gets us to where it's not in my face. I understand that, and that can feel a little better. It really can. But I'm not sure it resolves it. And it actually functions as an enmeshment process. So that emotional cutoff functions as an enmeshment. We get too close because we're too distant. Intimacy is a paradoxical thing. And a paradox is you do the counterintuitive to get what you want rather than the intuitive, what you think should work. We do what doesn't work. Much like I was showing someone the fact of the Chinese finger cuffs. In fact, I see some right here.
Sorry, I did have some right here, and I just used them as an example. Here's the Chinese finger cuffs. You put your, this is bamboo, so it's kind of, it's stretchy. And of course, the more you pull, the tighter it becomes and you can't get out. But our intuitive sense is, let me out, I want out. And that's what emotional cutoff is. And what actually emotional cutoff is it tightens that bond. Now, it tightens us emotionally. Again, we may not see our family of origin, but I'm talking about the internal emotional process. So it tightens that. Whereas the counterintuitive process, which is to do what you don't think is natural or normal, is to push in. And when you push in, you then, well, if this would work right, but you push in, you can see it loosens the bonds. It's just I can't get it. It's still pretty tight. But the point is, it loosens the bonds, because I couldn't get out at all if I didn't loosen them. So it loosens them, and then I'm able to move out and leave this over here. And then I have true separation or true separateness, rather than this false kind of separateness where I'm just pulling and thinking I'm away. I want to be able to truly detach, not just superficially detach. I want to detach emotionally, not just on the map, or okay, I'm not going to go to the holiday dinners. That'll be my emotional, detachment. Setting boundaries, again, is the process of an emotionally mature adult self choosing limits. And that's okay. It's not an emotional distancing process. And again, emotional cutoffs actually attach us more internally to our family of origin, often not less, because we have effects of it in other relationships and other areas of our life. It also has an intergenerational flow, and we transmit that intergenerational emotional toxicity to our kids, because we've cut off from unhealthy family. They then see that cut off as a healthy thing or normal thing to do. They're cut off from some of the knowledge of their family, and then it goes on, and they get married, and then they have troubles and problems, and that's how we know family systems affects marriages and adult relationships. Emotional cutoff is what I call pseudo-independence. Pseudo-independence does not really free or function in healthy adults. Pseudo-independence is not healthy adulthood. True independence is. Pseudo isn't. And again, if I say, well, I'm going to be successful and I'll never need to ask my parents for help again. I'll never need to ask an ex-wife for help again. And I'll make enough money so I can be on my own. And I won't have to depend on anyone or trust anyone. Now, I may become independent, but it's kind of pseudo-independence. My emotional life is still way over connected to an ex-wife or parents or whomever I'm trying to be independent from. I still have too much of a focus on that. Actually, our unhealthy, immature inner child is trying to act like an adult. And I try to help people not try to act like an adult, but to act like and become an adult emotionally, where they don't have to run away or cut off from others. The emotional cutoffs are the process of falling off on the side of too much distance or separateness, as we try to get away from the too much closeness or togetherness we feel with the other or with our family. A classic example of this is the most classic example of an immature emotional cutoff. When someone says, I don't believe in going back to my family of origin or doing past work or present work on the family of origin. I just believe I'm an adult now and need to learn to live as an adult. I don't need them anymore. Why focus on them? Just give me tools to live for today.
That family of origin stuff is just to keep you a victim and to blame your parents and is a waste of time. So what the person has decided to do is they're never going to see their parents again, and they've cut off from unhealthy siblings. And people will come to me in that state and say, okay, now just give me tools to live. Well, how are you not living then? If you're independent and because their life is not working well. And they know that, and they think it has nothing to do with any of that cutoff. And I usually tend to say, you've got a bunch of issues in there that you keep stumbling over. I'm not saying, and again, they think I'm suggesting they might want to be best friends with their parents or best friends with their siblings. You don't have to be best friends with your siblings. You don't have to be best friends with your family or your parents. That's not what healthy, mature adults do. In fact, healthy, mature adults can even admit to the fact and believe the fact that, if I were choosing friends, I probably wouldn't choose my parents as friends. If I just met them I probably wouldn't even choose them. Or my siblings. They're not like me. That's okay. They don't have to be like you. Can you accept them being not like you and you not like them and not cut off? That's the real goal and trick. I don't have to treat them as though I just love spending time with them. I may not love spending time with them. But cutting off tends to sabotage or derail that maturing process. It would almost be like a 14-year-old running away from their family at 14 and never going back. Do you think that will ever have any impact on their life? Well, it generally tends to. Now, I understand there can be some circumstances in which survival is needful for us to do that. So for all of you who are going to write and say, well, my family's different, I understand. There are times in which, I might recommend you can't do anything, but then I still recommend to them, even if you're going to not see your parents, not talk to them, not talk to your siblings. Okay, that's cool. What are you going to do about the siblings and the parents that are inside you? Let's work on that, because that's still going to help you not cut off. And it's going to be a positive thing to do that. I'm not telling you to go visit them for Christmas. What I'm telling you to do is let's work on the issues that they create for you internally, because just cutting off from them doesn't solve that. Another example of emotional cutoff, Mary had a dysfunctional family, alcoholic family, and very codependent and victim, an under-functioning mother, alcoholic father. The sister moves closer to the mother. Excuse me, I've got that. No, the mother was alcoholic. The father was very codependent, but the mother was very high-functioning. The sister moves closer to Mary, and Mary, so that the sister, is now synergizing with Mary, and they're getting along. Now that she's moved closer and also closer to their mother, Mary's sister and the mother are now getting closer, leaving Mary out. So they've formed an unhealthy bond that leaves Mary out of the system, creating a triangle. So Mary chooses to distance herself from her toxic mother and from her toxic sister, but does this due to her jealousy of her sister and desire for a healthier relationship with her mom she just started to have before her sister moved close to them. So now she is more distant and feels more settled inside, but she's still left with the painful jealousy, neediness, hurt, and loneliness. That's the problem. You might feel more settled or more relaxed, but you got all this emotional roiling going on inside. Let me share with you what an emotional cutoff is. Then I'll share what healthy boundaries are like. Emotional cutoff, I act with leftover feelings I don't deal with and choose to distance myself from another or others rather than deal with those feelings. That's the basis of an emotional cutoff. That's what underlies it. I disconnect because I can't handle the relationship emotionally. I use emotional cutoff as a means to change my family of origin or to get them to value me more or to be more empathetic. Well, I'll just punish them. Whenever we cut off to punish, and again, that can be kind of unconscious because we may not realize that. Whenever we cut off to try to punish, that's an emotional cutoff. That's not boundaries. Well, I'm going to set these boundaries. I'm just not going to text or call them anymore. Actually, what we want to do is punish them and change them so that they'll respect us or care about us more. That's an emotional cutoff. That's not boundaries. That's not healthy, mature boundaries. I use my black and white thinking or all or nothing thinking to decide I need to cut off. And again, someone is either all good or all bad. And often cutoffs have to do with that. Acting in the relationship out of irrational expectations or unfulfilled fantasies of the other will result in cutoff or enmeshment. And again, we have these unrealistic expectations. Just as Mary had the expectations with her alcoholic mom, who's high functioning, and so she can relate to her, but the problem is she's hoping her mom will become the mom she always wanted. And now Mary's sister is come in and kind of undermine that process. But the problem is she's more likely to cut off because she's still hoping for the mom she never had. Now, I believe Mom and Mary can have a better relationship because the more calming we do and the more maturing we do as individuals, we actually end up, it tends to lift all boats on the ocean. And so we can have oftentimes a slightly better relationship with a parent that we'd like to relate to. But the thing is, it's never going to be enough to turn them into the fantasy parent that we always wanted. We still have to deal with us, our needs, and taking care of us, and not change them so that I can be happy. Otherwise, we're going to end up getting disappointed, mad, hurt, jealous, and we're going to cut off. So, what is not emotional cutoff? Or what are maybe healthy boundaries? Setting boundaries which are based in my own choosing, values, and beliefs, not to punish or change them, or because I can't handle it emotionally. For example, well, I'll give you some examples. Not tolerating unhealthy or toxic behavior can be a boundary. If you are going to swear at me and all you're going to do is swear, I don't like that. That's abusive. It's emotional verbal abuse. So what we'll need to do is limit our interaction to texting or to email, because I don't want to hear those verbal discounts. So that's a boundary. And I've asked you many times and you haven't respected that, so we're going to go to that. And then eventually, let's just say worst case, the person has cussing Tourette's. They can't stop cussing you because they're mad, they're angry, or they're alcoholic, or who knows what the problems are they're having, because they've had their own problems. And we may have to say, I'm not going to be communicating to you except through letter, because I don't want to subject myself to the verbal abuse. Now, we can say I can't stand it. What I'd want to go work on is me being able to stand it more while telling them I'm not going to take it anymore. But I want to work on increasing my ability to have a more emotional, tougher skin and see them as not well and not take their words personally. I want to be neutral about what they're doing. If a JCPenney clerk cusses at me, that's not going to bother me all that much. I'm going to go, I wonder what's wrong with her. I wonder what's wrong with him. That doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to take it so personally. That's where I want to get to that neutrality state. Setting boundaries are about having non-negotiables. It's about staying in place emotionally and not moving emotionally. It's working to stay in place at the 90-degree level, not either going to the 0 or the 180. And that's not always easy, but it's a worthwhile goal. And then boundaries are appropriate when we avoid abuse. You know, I don't want to be abused, so I'm not going to be hit or screamed at or shamed. And I'll say, hey, we're going to have to change this. I'm going to work on not caring about the shaming or the cussing. I'm going to work on not caring about that. While at the same time, I'm going to go, no, this is not okay. It is okay for us to set boundaries, create distance for safety and for someone who does not respect my non-negotiables. In other words, if I'm coming to talk with my uncle and he wants me to visit, and I'm going, we don't believe the same things politically, let's say, or religiously, or whatever hot items, and all he can do is talk about politics, then I might say, hey, I'm kind of interested in talking about something else. How's the barn that you're building? How is that coming along? And if he keeps trying to evangelize me to his political or religious view, then what I need to do is work on staying out of that game and messing up that game. Versus, I'm never going over there again because he just keeps pushing my buttons. I don't believe the way he believes, and I'm so mad at him, and I wish he'd stop. Well, there are ways I can change the subject, or even say, okay, you're right. That you like, this political candidate or that political candidate. Maybe they're on both different sides of the same of the spectrum, and I can say, sure, they're great. They're just great. And, then I'm going to be one who's not going to be one to fight with. There's no argument we're going to have because it doesn't mean anything to me. So there is no argument. And I'm interested in changing the process, not just the content. The content I don't care about. No president has called me for my advice. No president has called my uncle for his advice. So what? We're one vote. I mean, that's who we are. Not that vote is unimportant, but that's how much power I have. And so I realize the limitations of my power to change things. So in brief, many ask me, why would I be asking someone to stay in emotional contact with an unhealthy family member? I don't ask anyone to stay in close proximity or over close friendship or acceptance of very toxic family members' behaviors. And when I say staying in emotional contact, that doesn't mean you're talking with them all the time and actually having that one-on-one contact with them all the time. What I mean is stay emotionally contact with them within you so you can deal with the ravages and what has affected you internally. That's what I mean by staying in emotional contact. What I feel is the most healthy is to stay emotionally connected, meaning emotionally neutral, while having healthy boundaries with unhealthy people and unhealthy family members. Again, the goal is to grow emotional neutrality and healthy boundaries. We are aiming at setting boundaries without emotional reactivity. Two people can set the same boundary, as I've said before. One can be neutral and one can be emotional reactivity. One neutral, one reactive. Same boundary. And what I suggest people do is not do the reactive. And that takes some learning and time and some help. And I think it takes some help from a coach or for a relationship expert. So it is not the boundary that defines the cutoff, but our internal emotional state, connectedness, enmeshment, and reactivity that defines the emotional cutoff. This is what I believe is the goal. This is what I believe is the goal and is very possible to attain. I have been helping people attain this for 35 plus years. And I know it works, and they usually come back and thank me many times for that help. It's not because I'm any genius or smart or so brilliant. It's that I have and know ways to help them achieve that, and that they're grateful for. But that's my job. If you'd like to learn more about emotional cutoffs, healthy boundaries, emotional neutrality with those who have imprinted your life, your family of origin, your spouses, children, grandparents, and you can start, if you'd like to learn more about those things, contact me and you can start your work towards maturity, freedom, reducing emotional reactivity, and feeling strong and having a strong emotional backbone. If you just want to set up a one-time consultation, that's fine. I'm happy to do this to see if I'm the right professional for you to work with. I do charge for that consultation. However, you don't owe me future sessions. You can work as much as you want. I have people who meet 3 times a week. I have people who meet once every month or month and a half. I mean, it depends on where you are and what you're trying to achieve. Please see my contact information on the screen. I should have my email address and my phone number. If you want free resources, you can contact me and I'll send them to you, and also send you information about working with me. No matter what country you're in, unfortunately I just speak English, so we primarily work with the English speaking. I wish I spoke more. I did take German, but I don't speak enough German to do well enough in a coaching session. Please join our YouTube, Facebook channel. I want to thank you for watching, and have a great day.
You don't need love and approval from your parents as an adult. Not needing this love and approval is not a lack of love, nor is it a disrespect for your parents. Their need for you to seek it from them is about them and not you. I hope you'll like, subscribe, and comment on this video. We respond to the comments that people put on there. This video is entitled, Building Up Your Ability to Go Without Love and Approval of Your Parents as an Adult. First of all, you don't need love, respect, approval from your parents as an adult. We just don't need it. We're adults. As children we do, but not as adults. Would it be nice? Of course it would be nice, but it's not needed. This feeling or need is a carryover from our childhood. Many adults who have been programmed to see parental approval as normal and the right thing to seek. When we become adults, we become brothers and sisters to our parents, not parents to children. They're adults, we are adults. I believe this need and desire, even addiction for love, approval, and acceptance, causes many who have grown up in dysfunctional families a tremendous amount of pain. I hear it all the time. Adults who receive this growing up don't need it. Those who grew up without it crave, chase, and hustle for it. And again, if you got it, you don't need it. If you didn't get it, then we search for the rest of our lives for it. Number 2, not needing it, not needing this approval, acceptance, or even a lack of love is not disrespect for our parents. Often the message from parents and internal feelings inside us make us tend to feel we're disrespecting them or not loving them if we don't need their approval or their acceptance. Many of us feel like we owe our parents, and some parents feel you do owe them for all that they have done. However, that's a dysfunctional belief, an unhealthy belief. They also may believe that you should be accepting their advice, needing their acceptance, and deferring to them because they are your parents. That's appropriate when you're children. It's not appropriate when we're adults. We do not owe our parents. They chose to have us. They chose to raise us. This was their responsibility that they chose. Kids don't owe parents for being cared for and being given a good life, food, clothing, schooling, a new car. Kids don't owe their parents for that. That's something parents can choose and do choose to give. And in fact, if they don't give it, if we're a child growing up, then it's criminal. Because if we have a child, we have to take care of them and raise them and take care of their basic needs. After we become adults, we then internalize the right to make our own decisions, choose our own path, live life as we choose it, even if our parents would not choose that way, even if our parents would not live that way. They don't have to live with our choices. We have to live with our choices. Now, certainly our choices might affect them. If I decide I've been living in the same hometown with my parents for all my life, and then I decide I want to move 3 states away, well, that would affect them. I understand that, and I can be sensitive and empathetic to that. But it's still my decision to make. I'm not here to just stay near them. That's not why I was made or became a child of theirs. I'm not saying all parents maliciously feel that you want you to choose what they would choose. It's just for many parents, they just held it for so many years, parents forget or never learn to give up that parental role. They never gave up that role. And probably their parents never gave up that role of continuing to parent their children when they were adults. Now, if you're entangled with your parents, with housing, finances, watching kids, or childcare, then we may feel there might be a quid pro quo. For this, you get that. We do this for you, so you need to listen and agree with us and get our approval. But I don't live with a quid pro quo. If you wish to watch my children, as I might say to my parents, that's fine. I would certainly appreciate that, and it would help me. But it doesn't mean I have to purchase the car you would like me to purchase, not the car I would like to purchase. Having this freedom from parents means we do have to take responsibility for our own choices and the consequences of our choices. And this can be difficult for many of us because that's a part of growing up and being adult. We call it, I've got to be an adult today. I'm adulting, which means I've got to do those things and take the responsibility for the decisions and do those things I'd rather have somebody else do for me. But that's what an adult does. If I do what my parents say, some of us immaturely might feel, then I have an immature right to blame them for the choice. So if I just go by their approval and acceptance and do what they want, guess who I can blame? Them. Very unhealthy pattern, very immature pattern. I need to take responsibility for my own choices. I also need to take responsibility and have a right to make poor choices, wrong choices. I have a right to do that. Now, it doesn't mean the universe may not smack me around, but my parents do not take that right away from me. I can make good choices. I can make bad choices. That's what an adult does. Thirdly, our parents' need for us to seek their approval and acceptance is often about them, not us. It is their issue. And I will say generously, they have programmed themselves, as well as having been programmed generationally, to need you to do this. Their parents expected it, so they expect it. And then they expect you to expect that from your kids. That's that intergenerational super self that gets passed on down. So I do understand that pattern, but just because that's the pattern doesn't mean I cannot break that pattern. Remember, this is their programming for what is a normal parent-to-child relationship or parent-to-adult-child relationship. That's their model from what they got from their parents. When we decide to change this relationship, for example, we want to acknowledge our awareness of our part in it and that it has been a norm for a long time. So there's nothing wrong with being empathetic or understanding where they're coming from. Now, if your parents don't make a change or don't grow up, because you're saying, hey, no longer am I going to be looking for your approval. I'm just going to be making decisions that I choose to make. I may ask you for advice, but I'm not looking for your approval. And that if they want to continue, that you should continue the same deference, or that they become stingy or hurt with their acceptance and approval and love, don't change back. They need to go through the 3 stages of resistance, which I've talked about in other videos, before they might come to accept the new, not need approval you. They may need to go through that process. Give them time. After this, the issues is theirs and not yours to own or fix or change. They may stay stubborn or needy, but that's not you causing it. That is them choosing it. Some parents do feel if you don't need their acceptance or approval, then you won't need them anymore, or that they are expendable. For normal parents with issues like this, I simply say, I love you guys. I thank you for all your help, but we are different from each other. And I will be making some choices or changes or decisions that you may not make, but I still care about you and I want you in my life. So I make that very clear to be myself while staying connected. But I am going to stay with, I'm going to be making some decisions you may not like. And I may not seek your advice for that. Why didn't you come and ask your dad when you went to buy that house? Why didn't you come and ask him what he thought about that house? I thought I'd stick with the realtor, my attorney, and good friends who are construction people. They advised me very well. Why do I need to go to dad if I don't want to? I don't have to do that. I don't owe you that deference. If you want to go and ask dad, you have a full right to do that if you choose, but you don't have to do what they say. So how do we move into adult relationship with our parents? Remember, changes don't occur overnight for these long-standing patterns. We will have to reteach our parents how to deal with us, and that we're going to be living a new way, living apart from their approval and acceptance. We can be caring and gentle and very pattern aware, so we know we've participated in this too. Because if I, for the last 20 years, have always gone to them and asked them their opinion, then when something comes up and they start to give their opinion, if I go, oh, well, why are you giving your opinion now? Well, now, wait a minute, I've done this for the last 20 years. Why do I expect them to just be aware of that all of a sudden? So we have to be gentle and reteach the pattern. And I've had many who thought they would just start out saying, well, mom and dad, I don't need your approval anymore. I'm going to do what I want. But this is reactivity. This is the other side of the pendulum to getting all of their acceptance approval. Then I react over here on this side and say, I don't need anything from you. I'm a grown up now. And I always know when people say, well, I'm grown now. I'm grown up. If you ever have to say that, you're not. So I just heard that the other day in a restaurant. Somebody was saying that, and I'm going, and that's why you're not. Because if you are grown up, you don't have to say I'm grown or grown up. Versus a non-reactive response, which would be, hey, mom and dad, I know you might disagree with this decision, but this, I believe, is my preference, and it's the best decision for me. I know you love me, but this is what I'm going to choose. Envision your life not needing their approval. What would that look like? What would you do if both your parents were gone? What if a magic wand just disappeared them? What would you do and how would you live? I like to love your parents and live like they're gone. Now again, I'm not, if they're troubled parents, narcissistic parents, all kinds of other types of parents, well, now that rule doesn't apply exactly in that way. But it's still okay to be caring about your parents, but you can also live as though they are not here in terms of you making your own decisions. And my hunch is eventually they won't be here. It is the normal course of things that your parents die before you. Both of my parents have passed away. And I wanted to live who I was while they're alive and live who I was after they're gone. I did that sorta, and many times I failed, and I've been working on doing it better and better. And particularly my mother, who lived much longer, I was able to work on it much more with her without rejecting her. Ask yourself, what would be the downside of letting go of parental approval, or that need for that acceptance, or what would be the downsides of that? And deal with those consequences, those downsides. For example, they might stop watching your children. They might feel hurt and unloved. They might even think you're being an ungrateful child. They might retaliate. Your mother might cry. Your dad might cry. And maybe they would have hurt feelings. Maybe they would believe you're being selfish. All those are the downsides of not seeking their approval. Deal with fortifying yourself against those things. Lastly, grieve the loss of parental acceptance or love or approval, that some may need to accept that it will never happen, and resolve the feelings associated with accepting that I will never get my parents' approval and acceptance. And that's okay. They can be who they are, and I got to be who I am. Embrace needing their acceptance and approval as a fantasy you don't need. I hope you'll comment, like this video. I want to thank you for watching. Have a great day, and be wise.